This story is about the real life of Henry David Thoreau. He lived in Concord, Massachusetts, more than 150 years ago. Henry didn't want to be any of the things that people thought he ought to be. He didn't want to be a preacher or a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer. He didn't want to work in his father's pencil factory. What he wanted was to go out in the woods and learn about all the plants and animals and birds and then write about them. He also liked being helpful to his neighbors. Other people didn't always understand why Henry wanted to do these things, but he had some friends who did, Ralph Waldo Emerson and the Transcendentalists. Here is a story about Henry and the work he liked to do. It is a misty, mizzling morning. Henry steps out the door and sniffs the air. It is a perfect day to walk to work. Henry stops beside the pond to dig comfrey root. Channing walks by. Henry, he says, you're not doing anything today. Come fishing with me. Not today, says Henry. I'm walking to work. Henry puts comfrey root in his hat and walks down the path. From the top of a hill, Henry sees clouds far away. It's been a dry summer, but he knows it will rain today. The rain won't come until the afternoon, so Henry fills his cup with water and sprinkles it on the milkweed flowers. Hosmer meets him on the path. Are you being a rain cloud today, Henry? He asks. I'm walking to work, Henry says. At the brook, Henry cuts a pole from a pine branch. With it, he pushes 3 crossing stones into place. He puts the pine needles in his hat with the comfrey root. Henry tramps a trail across Hosmer's field and finds a fox's den. Mrs. Hosmer is sitting at her front window. Henry calls to her. Keep your chickens inside tonight. There's a fox around, he says. He leaves a branch of sweet-smelling pine on her window ledge. In town, Henry meets the postmaster. Henry, he says, I can't walk on my sore foot. Since you're not working, can you take this letter to Emerson? I'm walking to work right now, Henry says, but I'll take it to him on my way. Henry takes the comfrey root out of his hat and gives it to the postmaster to help his foot feel better. Henry finds Emerson in his garden and gives him the letter. Emerson says, the woodchucks are eating everything in my garden, Henry. I can take care of the woodchucks, says Henry. I'll bring them out to the country on my way to work. Henry plays his flute, and the woodchucks run to him. He tucks one in each pocket and walks off through the woods. In Alcott's field, where Henry sets the woodchucks free, he finds a patch of wild strawberries. He digs up some of the plants and puts them in his hat. Mrs. Alcott is hanging shirts to dry in the yard. You'll have to bring in those shirts soon, Henry tells her. It's going to rain in an hour. Henry walks along the road to Hawthorne's house. Inside the fence, the garden is growing wild with grapes and raspberries. Henry takes the strawberry plants out of his hat and finds a perfect place for them in Mrs. Hawthorne's garden. It starts to rain. Henry walks in the millbrook, measuring the shallow water as he goes. Soon he meets old Flint sitting on the bank. Are you taking a bath, Henry? Asks Flint. No, says Henry, I'm just walking to work. Henry climbs out of the brook and into the middle of a big huckleberry bush. He crawls under it to cut away the tangles and picks berries until his pockets are full. Henry marks a path from the road to the huckleberry bush. As Henry walks down the path to his cabin, he meets Channing, carrying his fishing pole. He shows Henry the fish that he caught. Did you go to work, Henry? He asks. I'm just getting to work now, says Henry. What is your work? Channing asks. It's writing, says Henry. I'm writing a book. Henry turns toward his cabin. All day he's taking care of things in the woods and in town. Now he's back where he started. Inside, he lights a fire. He hangs up his hat and coat. Then Henry sits at his desk to begin his book. Today, he writes, I took a walk in the woods. I hope you get a chance to take a walk in the woods sometime soon, and that I do too.